Yeah, blessed love to the royal family. Yeah, give thanks for life. This is the African Liberation Network, and I'm the host, Prophet Daniel. Yes, and we're here with the Honorable President of the UNIA, Brother John Hargrove, for another episode of the Garveyite Lessons. And tonight's topic is elocution, which, we'll elaborate on. If you're not familiar with the word, then I'm sure you will be by the end of the program. So let's welcome our esteemed guest. Blessed love, Brother John.
Thank you, Prophet Daniel. Thank you to the African Liberation Network. Pleasure to be back, and a pleasure, as always, to be able to share the teachings of the Right Excellent Marcus Mosiah Garvey. As Brother Daniel mentioned, tonight we'll be going over lesson 4 of the course of African philosophy. These are Garveyite lessons. And as Prophet Daniel said, I am the president of a division in the UNIA ACL, the Atlanta division. I don't want people to confuse my position with the seat of the Right Excellent Marcus Mosiah Garvey. That is the President General. In our current times, we serve under the Honorable Michael R. Duncan, sits in the seat of the Right Excellent Marcus Mosiah Garvey as the 11th success. Wait, 10th successor. Yes, and the 11th President General. So when we talk Garvey and Garveyism, we in Division 421 here in Atlanta, under the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League, we feel that we always have to go to what we consider the primary texts. So when we talk about Garvey, we want to know what Garvey said for himself. And when it comes to lessons and instructions, we believe that there's no higher lessons and instructions that Mr. Garvey gave us other than this text here, Course of African Philosophy. So with that, we will continue our discussion. And the fourth lesson that Mr. Garvey emphasizes is a lesson titled Elocution. Elocution, as Garvey says, means to speak out. But he says, if you have a story to tell it well. We have to understand, as we talk about leadership and representatives, because that's what Garveyism is really about. In its essence, it's about developing us as a race to lead ourselves and represent ourselves, and do it in such a way that we show that there's no need for anyone else to do that for us. But in the process of doing that, one of the things that we have to do is communicate. The first lesson that we touched on was intelligence, education, universal knowledge, and how to get it. So after we've spent all of this time consuming all of this information, Garvey comes back in lesson 4 and emphasizes that it's important for us to be able to communicate or elocute this information. So he spends an entire lesson talking about the importance of communication. Some of the things that he mentions, that Mr. Garvey mentions, is speaking clearly. In lesson 1, he also touched on mastering the language in which you were born under. So for us, English, not only mastering English, but also knowing that English comes from French and Latin. So we should study those as well. But after we've mastered the language, then we should be able to go out and speak this language very well, and be able to articulate our ideas, our concepts, our beliefs to our people in a way that it can be clearly understood. Not only clearly heard, Garvey also talks about the volume in which we speak. He says, so we have to consider, our audience. That's something that any great speaker will tell you is you have to consider your audience. So whether it's Garvey in Harlem, on the corners, standing on a soapbox, delivering his message. And at the time, they said that Garvey's voice would be able to travel around corners, but he knew the audience or the space in which he was speaking. So he talks about whether you're speaking to a small room or a large room, you have to be able to speak in such a way such that the person in the back can hear what you're saying. What's the point in us spending time trying to convey a message if we're not, loud enough, such that everyone can hear us? If they can't hear you, there's no way that they're going to internalize the message. So that's the first thing. Well, those are the first two things: is being able to articulate what your thoughts are, but being able to say it in a loud enough way to where everyone in the audience, your target audience, can hear you.
Yes, we'll give thanks for the introduction, to the topic of elocution. Essentially is proper and efficient communication, correct? Right, because communication is a two-way street. It takes a speaker and a listener. And if the speaker is speaking and the listener is not taking in what the speaker is saying, then it's really ineffective. And that could mean, using words that people don't understand, or it also could mean your accent or whatever the case. But, there's certain different factors that you have to consider when communicating to an audience. And so, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges, that we might have as we, because we've talked about leadership, and as you mentioned, earlier in your, introduction there, that being leaders is really what this UNIA is all about. So what would you say are some of the challenges that, leaders, Black leaders, in general, leaders may face when it comes to communication? Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Great question. So for us, it comes down to confidence. That's a big thing with Garveyism. Without confidence, we are twice defeated. With confidence, we have won before the race has even started. So there has to be a level of confidence in our communication, and the basis for that confidence comes in two fashions. Garvey talks about an alignment of our head and our heart. And what he's talking about there is, one, we have to have a understanding of what it is that we're speaking on. I think that's one of the biggest detriments that a lot of our leadership has, is once we get on that platform and once we do get an opportunity to display what it is that we know, it's not an impressive display. So knowing, having a level of knowledge of the subject matter is of critical importance. Even if it's, even if you're not an expert in the field, we should at least be aware of the discussion. That's a responsibility that we have as leaders, is to be well-rounded educationally. The second component to that is, Garvey talks about it as your heart. So expression, having a level of passion about the things that you're speaking on. So some of our brothers and sisters, they are extremely intelligent and they know all of the facts forwards and backwards, but they don't have the passion and they don't express that passion when they communicate. So that's what I would say is we lack an overall level of confidence of what we are speaking on. And that confidence is related to either a lack of intelligence of the subject matter or a lack of passion in regards to what you're speaking on or the people that you're speaking for. So those that's what I would say, my brother.
Thank you. Yeah. It's like back in those days, Marcus Garvey's time, there, the speaking, as you said, would be like outside, as you said, his voice would go around the corner. But Marcus Garvey was a Jamaican, a Black man, African still. But he came from Jamaica and had a Jamaican upbringing. Therefore, I imagine he had a Jamaican accent. But when you listen to Marcus Garvey's speech, yeah, you can hear recordings today. You can still understand what he's saying, in a sense of it's not like he's speaking patois, so, I think that also is something to consider when speaking. But now, all right, the African diaspora is, there's many languages, many dialects. So nowadays, in order to be able to get your message across, it's like you have to, I would think one might want to try and also reach out to, say, like the Francophone communities and things like that. What would you say about, the language barrier when it comes to being a Black leader for international, Black unity? How can that be accomplished these days?
Great question. But again, we have to build upon the lessons that our ancestors gave throughout history. So Garvey was one of the greatest organizers that we've had as a people, and the greatest organizer for us as a people in modern time. His greatest tool in regards to propaganda, but we're going deeper into, because elocution is a form of propaganda, but the propaganda that you are alluding to in regards to a solution would be more so our written propaganda.
Okay.
When you look at the Negro world, it was the text was the same, but it was printed in different languages. So the level of intelligence did not change. The level of passion, as far as what was being expressed, did not change. The only thing that changed was the language in which it was read. One of the challenges that you bring up that is still valid, but we think is fairly minor, is that clear translation in regards to written speech, or not written speech, spoken word. Sorry. So the things that we say in our native tongue, to be able to translate that, to translate a speech into another language, the passion doesn't always translate over, because you either get a robotic translation, or you get another individual that may not either have the level of intelligence that you bring or that level of passion. So you automatically, that's that phrase, lost in translation. You automatically diminish a bit of the message once you start to transcribe into different languages.
Understood.
But
So,
we still do the best that we can, and in that instance, we would rely upon the passion of what's being expressed, and that has to be translated over. The intelligence, the quantifiable portion, that usually translates over. Math is universal, but the sentiment, the emotion, that is something that can be difficult to translate.
Understood. So elocution is specifically spoken word, then, not necessarily written.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. However, we in modern time, we have to. I consider it communication in general.
Okay.
So whether you're writing a letter or speaking a word, or doing what you're doing here, where you're creating a podcast to be diminished to the world, this is relaying a message. Is elocution. So how well we relay that message is how I think of elocution. A military structure, chain of command of orders going up and down can be a form of elocution. Just making sure that the orders are understood clearly. So that's the basis of elocution.
All right. Well, when we think about Marcus Garvey again as a speaker, as a writer, he spoke on a vast, amount of topics and everything, he often included religion into, his philosophy, his opinions. Would you say that including that element would help one in today's world, or would hurt in relaying the message? Religion and spirituality, etc., however one wants to term it,
Yes, great question. From my understanding of Garveyism, the essence is truth. So, whatever, if spirituality and religion is something that an individual needs to tap into for their truth or for their expression, we support it. I believe, and help me if correct me if I'm wrong. Are you saying the aspect of offending certain religions, or if someone believes a certain spirituality and you're expressing a different spirituality, is there an issue where there could be a clash of beliefs? Is that what you're saying?
I'm asking because at one point, like say in Marcus Garvey's time, for instance, most of the Black people you would assume would have been Christian, especially in the Western world, right? But nowadays, there's a lot more, variation. You have, say, Black Muslims, you have Hebrew Israelites, you have Moors, and I sometimes wonder if when you include religion, does it kind of throw it off to where it's like now you're missing a whole audience and they can't hear you,
I understand what you're saying. What I would say, Garvey would profess is we have to express our truth. So if I am and I was born Baptist, but if I'm a Baptist, go to church, been going to church since I was a child and raised in the choir, it would be disingenuous for me to go into a Muslim space and try to profess, as though I was raised in their faith. I believe I should bring my truth into that space. We should also, obviously be respectful to the space and respect the customs, but I don't think that there should be a dishonest presentation. You know what I mean? I think that's what I'm trying to say. Religion is a tricky thing, but we have to understand, those that are truly wise in religion, we understand that it has the same source. Majority of what we consider religion has the same source, and if you can tap into that source, then you can cross those boundaries.
All right. So then what would you say would be some good practices for someone who wants to work on their ability to elocute? What should they do to make themselves stronger?
Great question. And Garvey talks about this in his lessons. One of the things that he speaks on directly is practice. And he says practice in private spaces. So practice in areas where you will not be criticized. Whether you have to walk, into an empty space in the woods or whatever it may be, or empty room in the house. Practice amongst yourself until you get comfortable, until you get confident. He also talks about. He mentions a couple things. He says our teeth. He says in order to be good speakers, we have to have sound teeth. He talks about our nostrils, lungs, but having a clear, respiratory system, obviously is important. He talks about the strength of our diaphragm is important. He speaks a little bit about diet. He says that we should eat. He recommends to eat eggs um, every day, soft boiled or raw if possible. But he promotes to develop a strong chest. He says in order to be able to give long speeches, you must have a strong chest. So diaphragm, chest. He uses the word constitution, which really means your whole body. Drinking water or sipping water, specifically throughout speeches. You don't want to drink too much to where you go into the bathroom, but you want to make sure your mouth is hydrated. Um, so those are the physical aspects to it, and then the mental aspect of it is to know your subject. You know, one thing Garvey says is you should not fear your audience because you should be the subject matter expert. So whatever it is that you're speaking on, you should be the one in the room that knows the most about it. So um, those things, obviously, studying, having a good level of knowledge is fundamental. But then the practice, the respiratory, and some of the dietary components is what Garvey recommends.
Awesome. Yeah, well, do you also need to, like, say, in preparing for a particular speech in front of a particular audience, you said to know your audience. What can you do, say, to prepare yourself for an audience, when you're getting ready, when you have a speech in front of a certain group of people?
Great question. Um, that's good. That depends upon the speaker. Garvey teaches us in some of these upcoming lessons. He talks about an alignment of our free will with the Holy Spirit of goodness. So we have to understand that we are always being directed. We're always being directed by what Garvey considers the Holy Spirit of goodness. We have a decision, and God gave us the power of free will, so that we can be in alignment with the Holy Spirit, or we can be in rebellion to it. So it really comes down to the individual, what the Spirit puts on your heart at the time. And depending on the audience that you're speaking to. If you're speaking to a group of children, I don't think I don't think a prepared speech is necessary in that aspect. If you're speaking to an audience, it depends on what the issue is. Like if it's social injustice or police brutality, you have to have some facts. You have to know who are the what's the history of the matter. So you don't want to just be out. So you have to have some level of preparation there. And on the highest level of preparation would be like a legal concern. If you're being arraigned or summoned, you definitely want to have your paperwork in place such that you can relay your message. But that level of inspiration, that level of preparation, I would say is dependent upon the situation. It's different,
Okay.
It's different.
I imagine a little bit of that would also come from just practice, and understanding how, because I'm sure the first time you go to speak in front of people, you wouldn't be as good at any form of preparation as you would be, say, the 20th time, just because you don't really know what to expect. It's kind of like anything once you don't really know how it's going to go until you've actually done it a few times.
Yeah, as they say, you don't know what you don't know, but in my development personally, a couple of things that I can say as far as getting better. The first time I spoke, and it's different for everybody. So the first time I spoke was actually in a very comfortable area. It was amongst people that somewhat new. It was like a mix. Some people I knew, some people that I didn't know. So when you're in an environment, when you're speaking to people that you don't know, I would argue your preparation needs to be higher. When you're speaking to people that you do know, people that are more familiar with you and your message, you can be a little bit more lax on your practice and repetition and be more, more guided on inspiration.
All right. And I have one more question, but I would still give you the floor afterwards if there's anything else that you wanted to include. But how important is it? Well, how should I? Should a speech sound scripted? Should you be reading to people when you're going to speak to people?
Great question. And again, it's up to the individual, it's up to the audience, and the relationship. And in essence, what Garvey says to us is, as I said, our head and our heart should be in alignment. He says that people know when you are passionate about what you're speaking about. So what I would recommend to those types of individuals is, or what I would argue is that they may not be practiced enough. They may not be prepared enough. They may not be knowledgeable enough to be able to deliver the message without the written word in front of them. So I would argue honestly that that's more of a crutch, than an aid. I would argue, there are times for that. Like when there are times for that. Like again, it's all about representation of our people, and us representing ourselves. So I saw, I was watching some old UN clips a while back, recently, and I saw Kwame Nkrumah giving a message at the UN, and he was reading a typed up message. So I think at moments like that, when it's a formal presentation, a formal message, then having it typed up, having it written is perfect. And yeah, it's procedure thing, So, but if it's something where you're speaking to a group of people, more of a church atmosphere, I would argue you wouldn't want to have a written message.
Well, what I get from it is that a lot of it has to do with the circumstances, as far as the preparation, the presentation, the language, the attitude. Everything is definitely relative to who you're presenting to, where, and the outcome that you're looking for. Yeah, so that's a lot to consider. Go ahead.
Yeah. The one takeaway is, we just have to look at it. Difference between a family interaction and a professional interaction. So, as I said, when you're being a representative on a national stage or on a diplomatic stage, written documentation, reading from a written statement, not a problem. But when you're amongst family, when you're, when you come home, for the holidays after not seeing your parents for a long time, you don't have to read them, a message as to where you've been, what you've been doing, and what your aspirations are. There should be a relationship. You should know each other. You should know the needs of the community, and you should be able to speak to those needs. That's the best way I can explain it.
Understood. Well, I don't really have any more questions. I don't know if there was anything else that you wanted to say on the topic.
Just briefly, the takeaway I want individuals that individual should have for lesson 4 is the ability to communicate clearly, and the two aspects of that I feel that Garvey it's based, okay, the ability to communicate a message is based upon being confident in your ability to communicate that message. That confidence comes from two sources. One source is mental, what you understand, what you know about the subject. And the second component is physical. Your physical ability to speak well, to speak clearly, and to, if needed, to have endurance to speak for a long time. But we as leaders and as representatives, this is the most efficient way of communication. Garvey says that the pen is mightier than the sword, but the tongue is mightier than them both combined. So this is the most efficient and quickest way for us to communicate, to relay that a message is understood, and so that we can quickly begin to act upon that agreed upon message. It's a lot quicker and a lot more efficient than us trying to write things out back and forth. What can be done with written word, in 2 or 3 days can be done in a conversation, in 5 minutes. So let's be good at how we communicate. Let's communicate clearly, so that does not become an obstacle when it comes time to executing the vision.
Awesome. And well, I do have one more. It's kind of more of a suggestion, but could you kind of maybe give us some examples of great I don't know if it's elocutors, but some ones that we could look at to study and see what it looks like when it's done masterfully.
Oh man, you put me on the spot with that one.
Hey.
That's great question. Excellent question. And Garvey promotes that as well. He says, whenever there's a good speaker that comes into your community, you want to make sure you go out and hear that speaker, and see how they work, how they function. Man, from Brother John, Division 421 president, the great speakers of our time. Man, oh man. People go, you man, you about to get me hurt. So, all right, let's just speakers, great speakers. Brother TD Jakes is in the conversation. And I'm just gonna say 3 individuals, and I'm gonna leave it there.
Fair enough.
Brother TD Jakes, great speaker, been doing it for a long time. A lot of resources out there, showing some of his practices, but and this is one thing about these 2 brothers, as well as the next brother I'm going to say. One thing that we have to develop in our generation that I don't really see within our generation is these brothers, TD Jakes, as well as the next brother, they have somewhat of a cadence when they speak. It's almost melodic or musical, how they speak. Brother TD Jakes has a very deep voice, but the pace in which he speaks, the way he balances inflection, he does a great job of keeping the audience engaged. He does an excellent job of building suspense as well throughout his messages. So I really respect Brother TD Jakes. I've learned a lot from him, as well as the next brother that I'll mention, Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. He has done it for years. I still learn from him. I still watch a lot of his old videos as well as his current videos. But you can see it from, the time when he was a younger man, in his 50s, to the time where he is now 80s, approaching 90 years old. But another one of those brothers that cadence, that level of suspense, that level of his passion when he speaks. I don't think there's anyone that I've seen that comes to Brother Minister Farrakhan's level of expression of passion when he speaks. Even I believe personally, people from different languages can listen to a Minister Farrakhan speech, not even know what he's saying, but still understand what is being expressed through that passion, and still feel a level of emotion through his expression. So that's two brothers. Third brother, great orator in our time. We got to, show love, show credit where credit is due. Brother Umar Johnson, he is a great speaker. I've seen him speak a couple times in person. One of the best in our time, one of the best of our generation of the young, up and coming next generation. I would like to think of a sister. I can't think of any sisters off the top of my head, but I know that there's some out there. The sisters that come to my mind are more educational, like Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. But those would be the individuals that I would say to study from an elocution standpoint.
Thank you. Yeah, and that's helpful, because it's one thing to get an idea of what the word means, but to see someone actually do it and do it well is gives a lot more insight into what it is that we're talking about. So to the viewers, that's some study. You can study someone in the field doing what we're talking about.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. And again, thank you, bro. Thank you for that question. Again, I'm speaking more on the principles of elocution, not the individuals, not the personalities. I'm not saying whether I agree or disagree with their messages, but from the practice of elocution, I definitely see and respect these brothers' talents.
Understood. Not about necessarily the content, but just the delivery specifically.
Yes, sir.
Understood. Well, if you don't mind, you could share again the information that ones and ones, if they're interested in, joining the UNIA or assisting the UNIA or contributing in any way to the UNIA, how do they reach? How do they contact? How do they go about doing so?
Yes, sir. Thank you for that question. We are UNIA ACL Division 421, officially known as the Dr. Julius Nyeri CBPM Division of the Universal Negro Improvement Association. We continue the work of the Right Excellent Marcus Mosiah Garvey. My name is Brother John. I serve as the president here in Atlanta. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can call us directly, 678-631-9404, 678-631-9404. You can email me directly, john.c.hargrove@gmail. And we also have social media, UNIA ACL Division 421, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. So definitely reach out to us if you are interested in continuing the work of the Right Excellent Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Race first, one God, one aim, one destiny. Thank you, brother.
Ashe. Yeah, thank you. We appreciate your presence again here with us, and we appreciate the information shared. And with great expertise, we know that you have studied and you're, knowledgeable of what you talk about. It shows in the way you speak and, the clarity that you deliver it with as a elocutor yourself. So thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, my brother. As I said, we all have to. Garveyism, the difficult part about it is it's an exemplary program. It's about setting the example. So if there's something that we need in our community, even on the aspects of leadership, if we don't see it, we have to be able to develop ourselves to be that, as well as teach. Develop ourselves to be able to teach how our young people can embody that as well. So it's a responsibility. It's not fun, but we have to understand that true freedom really is responsibility and taking responsibility for ourselves.
Yeah, well, give thanks, Brother John, president of the Atlanta Division 421. And thank you to all of our subscribers and all the viewers. If you are viewing and you haven't subscribed, please do so. And hit the bell so you can get the notifications when we go live again. And yeah, we look forward to the next episode. We appreciate your presence with us, Brother John, and the YouTube viewers. And we're signing off. This is the African Liberation Network. I'm the host, Honorable Prophet Daniel. And this has been another episode of the Garveyite Lessons. And we'll see you soon. Blessed love. One love.
Yes, sir.
Mhm.